But first, over the weekend, the government was crowing about its economic performance, with the surplus for the current financial year likely to come in at around $20 billion, rather than the $4 billion predicted at budget time just 2 months back. Well, great, but the person they should be thanking for the surplus was Peta Credlin over the weekend, whose future fund earnings are now counted in the bottom line. Oh, and of course, too, the Russian dictator, whose war on Ukraine has driven prices for our commodity exports and the taxes they generate sky high. But there is no merit, none at all, in Labor's budget that's driven a surplus by circumstance and not policy change or fiscal restraint. This instead is an accidental surplus that a new government gets when it changes the accounting rules on the Future Fund and then gets a lucky break with our terms of trade. Now, it's worth noting that the commodities that have driven this surplus are the very commodities that this government demonises on a daily basis: coal and gas, that the rest of the world wants, of course, but we are increasingly reluctant to use here ourselves, and that Labor and the Greens want us to keep in the ground. So understand this: there's no sound basis for our prosperity going forward, and that's what really matters. Forget this serendipitous surplus for the year that's just gone. We've now got deficits, as I said, as far as the eye can see. And for millions of Australians, there's just more price pain from this government that's making things worse, not better. There's grocery prices up over 10% this year against last year. There's power prices, well, they've just risen on the 1st of July, on Saturday, some 25% in the eastern states. There's the mortgage cliff that more and more people are about to go over, with average home buyers having to find an extra $20,000 a year on top of their existing mortgage repayments due to rate hikes just to keep a roof over their head. It's this government's renewable energy fixation that's the main driver, of course, of power prices. It's the government's spending addiction that's putting upwards pressure on interest rates. And it's the government's indebtedness to the unions that's driving all the workplace relations changes that will make productivity go down, not up. And it could all get worse tomorrow, of course, a further rate rise from the Reserve Bank, or perhaps a couple of months' reprieve if they delay it. Now, the basic problem, though, is a government that doesn't understand that the only lasting source of wealth is private business. And private business must be fostered with lower taxes and less regulation, not burdened with the reverse on the basis that government knows best. If Australia is to avoid a recession, it's almost certainly going to be on the back of massive immigration, with 750,000 people on their way over the next 2 years. Now, that might keep the headline growth in the black, but it won't stop each of us having an individual recession, with the growth per person likely to be negative, meaning the PM will tell us the country's doing well, even though at a household level, we all end up going backwards. And that's besides the downward pressure on wages, the upward pressure on housing costs, and the clogged infrastructure that migration on such a massive scale always brings. Because everyone arrives here needing a job, needing somewhere to live, and a way to get around. Now, one bright spot is that at least some people in the opposition are now starting to think about how we get the economy moving again, rather than being just a slightly less spendthrift version of Labor. In a speech tonight, the Shadow Treasurer Angus Taylor will point to the enduring lesson of the party's founder, Sir Robert Menzies, whose Forgotten People broadcast remains the best summary of Liberal Party thinking. And when the Liberal Party forgets Menzies, well, it ends up forgetting the people the party was created to represent. Now, Taylor's speech tonight is a nice contrast to Victorian Liberal Matt Back, who said recently the party had to move on from Menzies. The Menzies era was dead, he said, as if any political party can be taken seriously if it rubbishes its own record. And anyway, look, the surest way for federal Liberals to remain in opposition would be to take political advice from the Victorians.